Okay, so it's hard to even say it out loud, guys, but my fiancé. Well, yes, he proposed to another girl while I was sitting right there in the same room. Like, I don't even know where to begin because everything feels like a blur. It's like I'm trapped in a nightmare that I can't wake up from, no matter how much I wish I could. I should probably explain how we got to that point, because believe me, this wasn't just a random moment of insanity. It had been building up for a while. When we first got together, I truly thought I had found the one. We had that connection you hear about in all the romance stories. Like, the one where everything just fits perfectly, and you can't imagine life without them. His name is Ben, and we met when I was still in college. It was supposed to be one of those cute, meet-cute moments, right? We had mutual friends, and one night after party, we ended up talking for hours. I remember feeling this instant spark, like we just got each other in a way no one else had. Over the next few years, our relationship only got stronger. We moved in together, adopted a dog, and even started planning for the future. It seemed like everything was falling into place. He was my person, my best friend. And so, when he asked me to marry him, I said yes without hesitation. He took me to a beautiful park, surrounded by my favorite flowers, lilies, and asked me to be his forever. That moment felt like everything. It was supposed to be our happily ever after. But here's the thing. Now, I can't stop asking myself, was it ever really meant to be? A few weeks ago, we decided to have a small dinner party at our apartment. We'd invited some of our closest friends, including Jenna, who was one of my best friends from high school. Me and her were always super close, and even though she had moved to a different city, she and Ben had hit it off when they met at one of our gatherings a few months ago. I never thought anything of it. I mean, why would I? Ben and I were happy, and Jenna was just a friend. Looking back, maybe I should have seen the warning signs. Maybe I should have noticed the way they exchanged little inside jokes, or the way Jenna seemed to laugh a little too loudly when Ben said something. But I didn't think anything of it at the time. I was just so caught up in my own little world and in our life together that I ignored all the small things that didn't add up. That night, I was dressed up, feeling good about how everything was going. I was excited to spend time with our friends, to relax, and just enjoy life. But then, out of nowhere, Ben said something that immediately set off alarms in my head. He stood up from his seat, and everyone went silent. The room seemed to freeze. I thought he was going to make some sort of toast or say something about the engagement. I didn't think much of it. He's always been the type to make grand gestures when celebrating anything. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Jenna, Ben said, his voice steady but his eyes shining in a way I didn't understand. You've been one of the most important people in my life these last few months. I know I've never told you this, but I felt a shift in the room. It wasn't just the silence. It was the way he was looking at her. Something was happening. And in that split second, I realized something I never, ever expected to feel. Jealousy. But it wasn't just jealousy. It was fear. Pure, unfiltered fear. And it wasn't until Ben got down on one knee that I understood exactly why. He pulled out a ring. A beautiful, silver band with a single diamond on it. Jenna, will you marry me? Like, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even process what I was seeing. The room seemed to tilt. I know I wasn't making any noise, but I felt like I was screaming inside my head. Jenna was frozen, her hands clasped over her mouth, and everyone else in the room was just staring, shocked, confused, and all that, you know. My fiancé was proposing to another woman. In front of me. In front of our friends. While I was sitting there, watching it all happen. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a complete violation of everything I thought we were building together. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But all I could do was sit there and watch as Jenna said, yes. I don't remember how long I sat there. I couldn't even comprehend the laughter that followed. All these cheers, the congratulations. It felt like I was in a fog, just trapped in this surreal version of reality where nothing made sense anymore. I'm not sure how I even stood up from my seat, but somehow I did. I walked out of that room, pushing past everyone like I was invisible, like the world couldn't touch me, even though every step I took felt like it was dragging me into a nightmare I didn't deserve. I went into the bathroom and locked the door behind me. I stared at myself in the mirror, wondering who the hell I even was. I had just been engaged, I had just been so sure of my future and of us, you know. And now I was here, alone in the bathroom, my reflection looking back at me with empty eyes. I wasn't sure if I wanted to cry, scream, or just disappear. Minutes passed. I think I just stood there, breathing heavily, trying to ground myself. And then there was a knock at the door. Baby? Ben's voice. Soft. Hesitant. Can we talk? I was like, really? I wanted to shout, to ask him what the hell he thought he was doing, but my voice wouldn't cooperate. I was too numb, too broken. All I could do was open the door, and there he was, standing in front of me like everything was normal. He looked confused, worried, but not in the way I needed him to. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't even guilty. He was just, lost or something. Why didn't you just tell me about her? I heard myself say, though the words felt foreign in my mouth, like they didn't belong to me. Ben, you've been hiding this from me. All this time. He looked down at his feet, shifting uncomfortably like the weight of what was happening hadn't really hit him yet. I never meant for this to happen, okay? It's just that Jenna and no. I cut him off, my voice rising despite how much I didn't want to shout. You don't get to say it just happened. You've been seeing her behind my back, and I've been sitting here, thinking everything was fine.
How long, Ben?
How long were you planning this? His face twisted in pain, and I could see the guilt start to settle in, but I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want his apologies or explanations. They were empty, all of them. Like, the damage had already been done. I didn't mean to hurt you, he whispered, stepping closer. I didn't want it to be like this. You're the woman I love, but, I laughed, bitterly, cutting him off again. But what, Ben? You love me, but you want to marry someone else? You love me, but you're willing to throw everything we've built away for her. He stood there, unable to answer. His silence was the loudest thing in the room. It was crushing. It just was too much. The woman I thought I was about to marry was a stranger. The man who was supposed to be my partner was now a liar. I want you to leave, I said, the words feeling like they were scraping at my throat, but I couldn't stop them. I needed him gone. I don't want to see you right now. Just leave, okay? His face fell, and he opened his mouth as if to say something, but I didn't care. I didn't want to hear it. I couldn't. So, without another word, I turned away, sat down on the edge of the bathtub, and let the tears fall freely. I don't know how long I stayed there. It felt like hours. Or maybe it was just minutes, but it felt like the world had shattered, and I was standing in the ruins, unsure of who I was supposed to be or how to pick up the pieces. The way he'd looked at Jenna. The way he'd chosen her. Chosen her in front of me. Like literally right in front of me. And that hurt more than anything. The public nature of the betrayal. The fact that I was a mere spectator in my own life. Eventually, the sound of the door slamming open snapped me out of my thoughts. It was Jenna. She stood there in the doorway, wide-eyed, her hands wringing in front of her. She looked like she was about to cry, but there was no sympathy in her eyes. There was no regret, no shame. She looked guilty, sure, but more because she had gotten caught than because of what she'd done. Can we just talk for a second? She asked softly, as if she had any right to be here, as if I'd just accept her presence in my space. No, I snapped, standing up suddenly. There's nothing to talk about, Jenna. You and I are done. And Ben? I don't know what you two think this is, but you both made a choice. Now, you can deal with the consequences of that. I could feel the fury rising in me, but I didn't want to waste another second on either of them. They were already gone. They'd checked out long before this moment, and I was just the one left holding the pieces. Pieces that, frankly, I didn't even know how to put together anymore. I didn't expect Jenna to stay, to be completely honest. I didn't expect anything from her, really, but she lingered. She stayed right there in the doorway, shifting nervously from one foot to the other, her eyes darting around the room like she was trying to piece together what to say. I couldn't even look at her. Like, I just wanted to get away from it all, you know. Look, I know this is horrible, she said, her voice shaking slightly, but not enough to sound truly regretful. But I never meant to hurt you. I really didn't. I just thought. I interrupted, my voice dripping with disbelief. You thought what exactly? That this would be some romantic fairy tale, where I'd just accept it? Where I'd be happy for you and Ben? Jenna, I've been your friend for years. And you. I choked on the words, my throat tight with emotion. You knew. You knew what he meant to me, what we had, and you still did this. You went along with it. You sat there while I thought everything was fine. Her eyes softened, but I couldn't find any sympathy for her in that moment. I wasn't interested in her apology. The truth was there wasn't one that would ever make it okay. I know, she said, lowering her gaze. And I'm sorry. I didn't know how to tell you. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. It wasn't supposed to hurt you. Yeah, I scoffed, stepping back from her, finally making eye contact. Then why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you stop him? Why didn't you tell me the truth instead of pretending everything was fine? You think I wouldn't have understood? That I wouldn't have been hurt less if you'd just been honest with me? You knew it was wrong, Jenna. You knew. I didn't want to lose you, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to lose our friendship. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. I couldn't even process what she was saying. Did she really think that was going to make me feel better? That our friendship was more important than the years I'd spent building a life with Ben? Did she really believe that after everything, I was going to care about her feelings? You think you can still call me your friend after this? After you stabbed me in the back like that? That's what you want me to believe. She shrank back, visibly stung by the words, and for a brief moment, I felt a flicker of regret. But it was gone in an instant. I wasn't the one who had betrayed her. I wasn't the one who had destroyed everything. She was the one who had chosen this. And now she was standing here, pretending like she hadn't just shattered me into 1,000 pieces. Just leave, I said, my voice cold and final, though it felt like my heart was breaking all over again. I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear you try to explain something that doesn't need an explanation. She didn't argue at all. She just looked at me with sad eyes, like she was waiting for something, some sign that I would forgive her. But there was nothing. No words left to say. And with that, she turned and walked out. I didn't watch her go. I just stood there, trying to make sense of the mess I found myself in. The room felt emptier now, quieter. But it didn't feel peaceful. It felt hollow. Ben was gone. Jenna was gone. And I was left alone, trying to pick up the pieces of a life I thought I had built with the people I trusted most. But in that moment, all I could feel was the sting of betrayal. It wasn't just the act of it. It was the silence that followed. The absence of anyone who could truly understand what I was going through. Everyone had left, and I was standing here, drowning in my own confusion. At some point, I must have fallen asleep on the bathroom floor. My legs were stiff when I woke up, and my head ached like I had been hit by a truck. The harsh lighting of the bathroom made the reality of everything feel even more real. I wasn't dreaming. This wasn't some twisted version of my life I could wake up from. This was my life now. This was my new reality. I forced myself up, wiped my face, and stared at my reflection for a while. My eyes were red and swollen, my hair tangled, but I barely recognized the person staring back at me. Like, how had I gotten here? How had I let myself get to this point? And then my phone buzzed. A text. It was from Ben. Can we please talk? I know you're hurting right now, but I need you to know that I didn't want it to happen this way. Please let me explain. The text was like a punch to the gut. I almost threw my phone across the room, but instead, I just stared at it. Explain? What was there to explain? He had proposed to another woman in front of me. What explanation could ever justify that? I was still so angry, so raw, but a part of me wanted to believe him. Maybe he didn't mean for it to get this far. Maybe he didn't intend to hurt me this badly. But the truth was, it didn't matter. He did. And I didn't owe him anything. Not my time, not my forgiveness, and certainly not a conversation where he could try to justify himself. I ignored the text and put my phone down. I couldn't deal with him right now. Not when I was still trying to process the betrayal. I walked out of the bathroom and into the living room, where everything still felt like it belonged to a life that was no longer mine. The couch I had sat on with Ben, the bookshelves we'd picked out together, the pictures on the wall, the life I had been so proud of was just a facade. It was all gone, and I was left standing in its wreckage, wondering how I was supposed to rebuild. It felt so isolating, so alone. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run away from everything, but there was no escape. There was no before anymore. There was only what had happened. Only the mess I was left to clean up. But one thing I knew for sure, this wasn't going to be my life anymore. I wasn't going to let Ben or Jenna or anyone else dictate how I healed from this. It was going to be messy. It was going to be painful, but I was going to survive it. I had to, because if I didn't, then all of this destruction, this heartbreak, would have been for nothing. I spent the next few days in a daze. I barely had the energy to get out of bed, let alone face the world outside. Ben's text messages kept coming, but I didn't respond. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt a mix of fury and hopelessness. I wasn't ready to talk to him. I didn't know if I ever would be. I found myself going through old photos, videos, and memories, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. I had to confront it. I had to see it all, piece it together even if it hurt like hell. I watched videos of the two of us together, laughing, holding hands, talking about our plans for the future, and all that good stuff. I couldn't even recognize the woman in those videos. She seemed so hopeful. And now, looking back, I couldn't help but wonder how much of it was real. Was it all just a lie? Did he ever really love me? But the hardest part was seeing the photos of Jenna. She'd always been there. She was my friend. And now, I couldn't stop seeing her face in everything. She had been so close to me. How could she have done this? How could she have betrayed me like this? I reached out to a few of my closest friends, telling them what happened, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to talk about it. But I needed to. I needed to hear someone say the words out loud, to acknowledge the mess I was in. And the responses I got, they were a mix of disbelief, sympathy, and anger. Everyone was angry, and I guess I should have been too, but instead, I just felt numb. Like I was floating above it all, unable to really process the depth of the situation. One of my friends even suggested I confront Jenna, have a heart-to-heart, but I knew I wasn't ready for that. I couldn't even look at her without feeling like I might burst into flames. The next day, Ben showed up at my door. I wasn't expecting it, but when I opened the door and saw him standing there, I couldn't bring myself to turn him away. Maybe it was the fact that he had been a part of my life for so long, or maybe it was just the sheer exhaustion of dealing with all the emotions. Either way, I let him in, but I didn't let him speak until I was ready. You really thought you could just drop this bomb on me and everything would be fine? I asked quietly. You really thought you could just hurt me like this and I'd just accept it and move on? That's not how it works, Ben. He looked at me, his face filled with guilt and shame, but I could see the desperation in his eyes. I never wanted this to happen and you know that. I've been so confused. I never meant to hurt you. You didn't mean to? I shook my head, trying to control the anger bubbling inside me. Ben, I trusted you. I believed in us. And you've destroyed that. I don't even know who you are anymore. I thought you were the person who would never do this to me. His voice cracked. I'm still that person, but I made a mistake. A huge one. And I'm sorry. I couldn't stop the laugh that escaped my lips, though it felt bitter and hollow. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't bring back what you took from me. What we had. He stepped closer, his eyes pleading now, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy. I couldn't bring myself to forgive him. Not yet. Maybe never. I've been trying to fix this, but it's like nothing I say will make it right, he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I stared at him, feeling the weight of the decision I had to make. I didn't want to make it. I didn't want to let go, but deep down, I knew I had no choice. He had already let go of me. He had already made his choice. I couldn't keep holding on to someone who wasn't holding on to me. No, it won't, I said, finally breaking. It's too late. I'm not your second choice. I'm not someone you can just come back to when it's convenient. I can't be that person for you anymore, and I won't be. He looked at me with tears in his eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him. I had cried enough for the both of us. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice breaking. I love you. I never stopped. The words hung in the air like a cloud, suffocating me, but I couldn't believe them anymore. I couldn't believe anything he said. Because love wasn't supposed to feel like this. Love wasn't supposed to hurt this much. I'm sorry too, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But I can't keep doing this. Not anymore. It's over, Ben. And with that, I closed the door. And I knew, without a doubt, that I had made the right decision. The days following that conversation were the hardest I'd ever faced. I kept telling myself that it was for the best, that I was stronger than I thought. But it didn't make the betrayal feel any less fresh. I tried to fill the silence with distractions, like calls with friends, anything to keep me from thinking about the wreckage Ben had left behind. I threw myself into work, hoping that if I stayed busy enough I wouldn't have to face what had happened. But no matter how many meetings I attended or deadlines I met, it was always there, lurking in the background. This hole inside of me that I couldn't fill, no matter how hard I tried. I began seeing a therapist. I knew I needed help, and at first it felt weird. Like I was just going through the motions, telling a stranger about the chaos in my life. But slowly, I started to realize that talking about it helped. It didn't make the pain disappear, but it gave me a space to breathe, to unpack everything. At therapy, I learned to reframe my thoughts. I started to understand that I wasn't weak for feeling broken. I wasn't less of a person for trusting the wrong people. Ben and Jenna's betrayal didn't define me. Their actions weren't a reflection of my worth. I had to remind myself of that over and over again like a mantra, because some days, it didn't feel true. Some days, I still felt like I was drowning, but I started to feel stronger. I started to feel like maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild. Maybe this wasn't the end of my story. Maybe it was just a painful chapter one had to turn the page on. But the hardest part wasn't just dealing with Ben. It wasn't just confronting the feelings of betrayal. It was seeing the people I had once considered my closest friends, the ones who had been there through everything, turn away from me. It wasn't overt or obvious at first, but little by little, I began to notice the shift. At first, it was subtle, like a comment here or there, an awkward silence when I was with our mutual friends. Then there was Jenna. She didn't just stay away, she tried to make herself the victim. The more time went on, the more she played the part of the innocent bystander. She started telling people like, I never meant for it to get out of hand, or I never wanted to hurt her. And even though I had made it clear that I didn't want to talk to her, she still found ways to insert herself into my conversations with others, trying to shift the narrative, trying to make me out to be the one who had pushed her away. It made me feel small, like I was being gaslit into doubting myself all over again. I wasn't the one who had done anything wrong, but somehow, it felt like I was the one being blamed. The more people I talked to, the more I started to feel like I was losing control of the situation. Like Ben and Jenna weren't just trying to take everything from me emotionally, they were trying to take the support I had left. I reached out to Jenna after hearing about the rumors she had been spreading, asking if we could meet in person. I didn't want to get into it over the phone or through text. I didn't need to rehash the betrayal, but I knew that if I didn't confront her directly, I'd never be able to move forward. I couldn't let her twist the truth. We met at a small coffee shop downtown, the kind of place we used to go to all the time. I hated it, but it felt necessary, like some twisted version of closure. I sat down first and waited for her to arrive. She walked in, her eyes already looking guilty, but her shoulders squared as if she was preparing for a fight. We both ordered coffee and sat across from each other, the tension thick between us. Jenna, I'm not here to fight, I started, my voice steady. I'm not even angry anymore. But I need to make one thing clear. You can't keep pretending that you didn't know what you were doing. You can't act like you didn't see how much I loved him. How much we had. You took that from me and you can't rewrite that. You can't tell everyone that I was the problem. You're the one who made this mess. You're the one who decided to betray me. Her lips quivered, and she looked down. I know. And I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. But I love him. And I couldn't just watch him slip away. The words stung, but I didn't flinch. I didn't let myself react. You don't get to play the victim here. You don't get to act like you were caught in some love triangle. You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew you were destroying something that meant everything to me. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she whispered. I leaned in, my voice low but unwavering. It doesn't matter how far it went. It matters that it happened. And I don't need your apology. I don't need anything from you anymore. I just need you to stay out of my life. Stay away from the people who still care about me, and let me heal. She didn't say anything. She didn't apologize again. She just nodded, like she had finally come to terms with something I had known all along, that she had already lost me. I wasn't her friend anymore. And that was the only closure I needed. The weeks that followed were a blur. It was like a slow healing process. I started putting myself first again. I began making decisions based on what I needed, not what anyone else expected of me. I started saying no, without guilt, without hesitation. I quit trying to fix other people's problems, quit trying to please everyone. I realized I didn't have to apologize for setting boundaries, for choosing myself. By the way, work was a good outlet. It helped me focus, and I was more productive than ever. But I also carved out time for things I loved, things I had neglected for too long. I rediscovered old hobbies like painting and hiking that had always brought me peace. I surrounded myself with people who lifted me up, who made me feel safe and valued. Slowly but surely, I began to remember what it felt like to be me again. I didn't expect to be healed overnight. In fact, there were days when I still felt that ache deep inside, that nagging voice reminding me that things would never be the same. There were moments when I missed the version of my life where I believed in the fairy tale, where everything made sense. But I knew that the fairy tale had never been real. It was just a story we told ourselves because we didn't want to face the messy, complicated truth of love and trust. As the months went on, I found myself thinking less about Ben. His betrayal no longer had a hold on me. I had taken back my power piece by piece, and with each passing day, I felt more and more like the woman I used to be. But this time, she was stronger and wiser. One evening after work, I ran into someone unexpected. I was at the grocery store, just picking up some essentials, when I saw a familiar face in the produce aisle. It was Sam, a guy I had dated briefly before Ben came into my life. We had parted ways on good terms, but after meeting Ben, I had almost completely forgotten about him. Seeing him now, a year later, was a strange mix of nostalgia and curiosity. We exchanged pleasantries, catching up on the basics, like how's work, how's life, what's been going on in the past year. And for the first time in a long time, I realized how far I had come. I wasn't that broken girl anymore. I wasn't the girl who had been devastated by betrayal. I was someone else now, a woman who had taken control of her life again. And as we stood there, talking about nothing and everything, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in ages. Hope. No, I wasn't ready for a relationship. At least not yet. But I could feel it. The possibility. The idea that one day I could trust again. One day, I could love again. On my own terms and in my own time. After a while, Sam asked if I'd like to grab a coffee sometime. I smiled and said I'd love to, but I wasn't in any rush. I wasn't rushing into anything anymore. I had learned that my worth wasn't tied to anyone else, and I wasn't about to make the same mistake again. The thought of Ben still lingered, but not in the way it once did. It was no longer an open wound that I had to constantly pick at. It was a scar, a reminder of everything I had survived. And it wasn't going to control me anymore. Looking back, I can't say I have all the answers. I still don't fully understand why Ben and Jenna did what they did. I don't know if I'll ever truly get closure, but I don't need it anymore. What I've learned through all of this is that sometimes the only thing you can control is how you choose to move forward. And I chose to move forward. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't instant, but it was worth it, because now I know my own worth. I know what I deserve. And no one will ever make me feel like I'm not enough again. I don't regret the lessons I learned from the heartbreak. I don't regret taking the time to rebuild myself. If anything, I'm grateful for the strength I found through the pain. I've learned that I can survive anything, and I'll never settle for less than what I deserve. And maybe one day, I'll look back on this chapter of my life and see it as the turning point, the place where I started truly living for myself. But for now, I'm content. I'm at peace. And that's all that matters.